garment bag they said had been left near the front desk. I went down with nothing on me except the room key, because why would I think I needed anything else? When I came back up, the room was empty. Not messy. Not half-packed. Empty. Their suitcases were gone. My suitcase was gone. My phone charger, my wallet, the extra clothes I had packed for the wedding. All of it gone. At first I thought maybe they had moved to another room just to be difficult. But then the front desk clerk looked at me with that careful expression people use when they already know something bad has happened. My family had checked out. They had already left the hotel. A minute later, a message came through from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "This is your grown-up test, Sienna. Figure out how to get home." I stood there staring at the screen, feeling the floor drop out from under me in a way I still remember 15 years later. They thought I would break. They thought I would call and cry and promise to be more grateful, more obedient, more whatever version of me they had always demanded. But I didn't call. I didn't beg. And before I tell you how the same people who laughed when they left me behind ended up standing at my front door years later asking for mercy, let me show you what happened the night I realized nobody was coming back for me. I went back to the front desk, hoping there had to be some mistake, but there wasn't. The clerk checked the reservation again and told me my family had already checked out. My father's card had closed the room, and they were long gone. I used the desk phone anyway. I called home in Iowa, then my mother, then my father, then my brother. Nobody answered. That was when the truth settled in. They had not left me by accident. They were waiting for me to panic and come crawling back exactly the way they always assumed I would. The clerk asked if I had anywhere safe to go, and when I said no, she slipped me the address of a women's resource center and enough cash for bus fare. I still remember how strange that felt. A stranger was the first person to help me, not the people who were supposed to love me. By the time I reached the shelter, I had stopped expecting my parents to come back. The women there gave me a bed, a meal, and something I had not felt all night, which was calm. The next morning, a caseworker helped me figure out the first real steps. We contacted Iowa Vital Records so I could start replacing my documents, and she helped me set up a new email address on a shelter computer. After that, I started looking for work, even though I was exhausted and still wearing the same clothes. Most places turned me away. Then I walked into a small flower and event shop called Ellis STEM and Social. The owner, Marjorie Ellis, took one look at me and said I looked like life had hit me hard. Then she asked if I could show up at 7 the next morning and work without complaining. I said yes before she could change her mind. My first day was nothing glamorous. I swept floors, washed vases, hauled boxes, and helped unload deliveries. By the end of the day, my hands were scratched, my back hurt, and I smelled like eucalyptus and roses. But for the first time since my family drove away, I felt useful. That night, lying in my shelter bed, I realized something had shifted. They had wanted me stranded, helpless, and desperate enough to beg. Instead, in less than a day, I had found a roof, a plan, and a job. It was not much, but it was enough to tell me I was not finished. A week after I started at Ellis STEM and Social, my mother finally called. By then, I was already settling into a routine that felt strange and fragile at the same time. I was still sleeping at the shelter, still filling out forms to replace my documents, still wearing the same few pieces of clothing on rotation, but I was no longer standing still. I had somewhere to be every morning. I had work waiting for me. I had people who expected me to show up, and somehow that mattered more than I could explain. The call came from a number I didn't recognize while I was on my break behind the shop, sitting on an overturned crate with a bottle of water in one hand and dirt under my nails. I answered because part of me thought it might be about my paperwork. Instead, I heard my mother's voice, shaky and offended at the same time. mother thought I needed to grow up. She said they assumed I would figure it out and call within the hour. A second later, I heard him in the background, not even bothering to hide that he was listening. And then his voice came on the line like this whole thing still belonged to him. He said sometimes people only learn when they are forced to. He said I should stop being dramatic and come home now that I had made my point. That was the moment something in me went completely still. For the first time in my life, I heard them clearly. Not loudly, clearly. They were not sorry. They were irritated that their little lesson had lasted too long. They had not called because they were terrified for me. They had called because I had ruined the ending they expected. I told them if they wanted to know whether I could make it on my own, they could keep watching. Then I hung up. I stood there behind the shop for a full minute, staring at my reflection in the dark phone screen, waiting to feel guilty. But what I felt instead was relief. Pure relief. That night, I changed everything I could. I got a new number as soon as I had enough money to do it. I made a fresh email address for work and paperwork only. I stopped checking the old inbox except when absolutely necessary, and every message from home sounded the same. Come back. Stop punishing us. You've made your point. Even their apologies had control hidden inside them. None of them said what they had actually done. None of them said we abandoned you. They only talked about how I had reacted. A few weeks later, with help from the shelter and my first real paychecks from Marjorie, I moved into a tiny transitional housing room, and then, not long after that, into a studio apartment so small I could stretch one arm from my bed and touch the kitchenette counter. It was above an old storefront on a street that always smelled like coffee in the morning and hot pavement in the afternoon. The pipes knocked at night, the window rattled when buses passed, and the closet door never shut right. But it was mine. Nobody could send me downstairs and disappear while I was gone. At Ellis STEM and Social, Marjorie kept teaching me without ever making a speech about it. She showed me how to prep centerpieces, how to organize a delivery schedule, how to calm down a bride without sounding fake, how to move fast without creating chaos. She trusted me with small things first, then bigger ones. I learned how to open the shop, how to check invoices, how to keep track of rental pieces, and how to solve problems before they reached her desk. Every skill felt like one more brick in a life my family had never expected me to build. The strangest part was how quiet my new life was. No one was yelling. No one was mocking me to get a laugh. No one was setting little traps just to see how I'd react. I came home tired, made cheap pasta or soup, sat on the edge of my bed and realized peace was unfamiliar, only because I had been raised without it. By the end of that first stretch in St. Louis, I stopped thinking about whether my parents would try to reach me again. I knew they would. People like them always do when they think they still own the story. What mattered was that I was done letting them narrate mine. I had my own number, my own key, my own paycheck, and the beginning of a life that did not require their permission. For the first time, I was not surviving inside the shape of the family that raised me. I was building something outside of it, and that made all the difference. 5 years later, the city that had once felt huge and hostile had become the place where my life finally made sense. St. Louis no longer looked like the place where I had been abandoned. It looked like home. By then, I was no longer the girl sweeping floors in the back room at Ellis STEM and Social. Marjorie had taught me everything from floral prep to vendor coordination to how to keep smiling through a client meltdown without promising something impossible. I took business classes at the community college at night, learned how to manage scheduling, invoices, labor costs, and event logistics. And little by little, I became the person Marjorie trusted to run the shop when she was off-site. What had started as a small floral and event business had grown into something bigger, the kind of studio people recommended to their friends after weddings and baby showers and corporate dinners. I was handling consultations, styling event spaces, solving last-minute disasters, managing staff on weekends so packed I barely sat down. It was exhausting, but it was the first kind of exhaustion I had ever felt that came with pride instead of humiliation. There was something almost poetic about it, though I did not let myself think that too often. The same kind of family trip that had ended with me stranded in a hotel had pushed me into a life where I now helped create beautiful days for other people. I could walk into an empty venue and picture exactly how it would look by sunset. I knew how to turn bare tables into something elegant, how to make a nervous bride breathe again, how to fix a torn linen, a late cake delivery, a missing boutonniere, or a thunderstorm rolling in over an outdoor ceremony. I had become good in a crisis because I had lived through one that never really ended so much as changed shape. Around that time, I met Evan Parker. The first time I saw him, he was in uniform, kneeling beside an older guest who had nearly fainted during an outdoor engagement party we were setting up in Forest Park. He moved fast, spoke calmly, and somehow made the whole scene feel less frightening just by being there. Later that afternoon, after the ambulance left and the event somehow kept going, he came back to the venue because one of the guests had realized she was missing a bracelet. He found Marjorie first, then ended up speaking to me while I was redoing a table arrangement the emergency had knocked crooked. He apologized for the mess even though none of it had been his fault, then made some dry comment about how people always collapse right next to the most expensive centerpieces. I laughed before I could stop myself. It was such a small moment, but it stayed with me because he was easy to be around in a way I did not trust at first. He started dropping by the shop now and then, usually for coffee from the place next door and whatever excuse he could come up with. Sometimes it was to order flowers for a station retirement party, sometimes to ask if we knew any good caterers, and sometimes it was obvious he had run out of believable reasons and just wanted to talk. What made Evan different was not that he was kind. Plenty of people can be kind in small doses. What made him different was that he never pushed. He never asked why I flinched at certain questions or why I went quiet when people talked about family holidays. He never tried to pry open parts of me I had locked down just because he thought caring gave him the right. He waited. He let me have edges. He made space without making me feel like I owed him a confession in return. That alone made him unlike anyone I had known growing up. Around the same time, I began hearing more about my family back in Iowa, mostly through public posts and old acquaintances I had not fully blocked because they no longer mattered enough to bother. My brother Dylan bounced from one job to another, always with some excuse that made everyone else responsible for his failures. My father, Gregory Brooks, complained online about chain repair shops taking business from independent garages like his. My mother, Linda Brooks, filled her page with vague posts about loyalty, gratitude, and how modern families had forgotten what really mattered. Every time I saw one, I felt that old pressure trying to creep in, the familiar lie that blood automatically outranked peace. But by then, my life had weight to it. I had a lease in my name, money in the bank, a reputation at work, and people who valued me without asking me to earn basic decency first. Marjorie eventually sat me down in her office one evening after a 12-hour Saturday wedding and told me she wanted to start giving me a share of the profits on the events I managed. She said I had stopped being help a long time ago and had become part of the reason the business was thriving. I remember just staring at her because I had no idea what to do with being recognized in such a direct way. In my family, praise was either bait or a setup. With Marjorie, it was just the truth. She saw what I could do and said so. No trick, no lesson hiding behind it. Not long after that, Evan asked me to dinner, and I almost said no out of habit. Not because I did not want to go, but because a part of me still believed good things could disappear the moment I relaxed around them. Marjorie must have seen it on my face, because she leaned back in her chair and said something I never forgot. Not everyone who comes into your life is trying to see how much pain you can survive. I went to dinner with Evan the next night. It was simple, quiet, and so normal it almost made me nervous. And somewhere between the appetizers and the walk back to my car, I realized my life had become something my parents never imagined when they left me in St. Louis. They had expected me to fail loudly and quickly. Instead, I had become someone steady, someone capable, someone other people trusted. And whether they knew it yet or not, that was the beginning of the part they were really going to regret. By the time I had been in St. Louis for several years, Ellis STEM and Social was no longer just a small shop trying to stay ahead of weekend events. Under Marjorie's eye, and with more hours from me than I probably should have been working, it had grown into something people actually sought out. We were booking weddings farther in advance, taking on larger corporate events, and handling private parties in neighborhoods I used to drive through just to imagine what that kind of life looked like from the inside. Marjorie still had the instinct, the taste, and the final word. But I had become the person keeping everything moving. I handled vendor schedules, staffing, timelines, late deliveries, budget headaches, and the thousand invisible details that make people think an event came together effortlessly. There was a strange satisfaction in that. I had spent most of my life around people who created chaos and then blamed everyone else for it. Now I was building a career out of preventing chaos before it could take over a room. Around the same time, Evan and I stopped circling each other and became something real. He never tried to rescue me from my past, and maybe that was part of why I trusted him. He did not look at me like I was broken, and he did not romanticize what I had survived. He just showed up. He called when he said he would. He listened. He made room for my silence without treating it like a puzzle he was entitled to solve. Being loved by someone steady felt so unfamiliar at first that I kept waiting for the hidden cost. But there wasn't one. It was just peace. And the longer I had it, the less willing I became to let anyone disturb it. Financially, my life was changing too. I was paying down my student debt a little at a time, bought my first decent used car without asking anyone for help, and moved into a better place with windows that actually kept the cold out in winter. Every one of those milestones felt small from the outside and enormous to me. There is something profoundly healing about paying your own bills after being treated like you could never survive on your own. Then came the first serious attempt from my family to push their way back in. A relative from Iowa sent me a short message saying that my grandmother had died. She was the only person in the family who had ever shown me small, private kindnesses without turning them into a speech later. She had slipped me birthday money when I was younger, and once told me in the kitchen, very quietly, that some people confuse control with love. Losing her hurt more than I expected. For about an hour, I sat in my car outside the shop with my phone in my hand, trying to decide whether grief was enough reason to let the rest of them near me again. Then the other messages started. My mother wrote that family should come together at times like this. My father wrote that whatever had happened between us, it was time to put it behind us and do the right thing. My brother did not apologize or ask how I was. He just sent a message that said, "Mom's having a hard time. You should call." Reading those words, I felt something in me sharpen instead of soften. Not one of them mentioned the hotel. Not one of them named what they had done. Even now, with death sitting in the middle of the conversation, they still wanted reconciliation without accountability. They wanted access without truth. I did not answer. I went to the service website, read the obituary alone, cried in my apartment that night, and let that be my goodbye. After that, I became more careful. Marjorie noticed before I said anything. She had a talent for seeing stress in the way I organized the cooler or checked my phone too often. When I finally told her my family had started trying to contact me again, she did not respond with sympathy. She responded like a business owner and a woman who had lived long enough to understand boundaries. She told me to keep my home address private, separate my personal information from the business wherever possible, and make sure no one at the shop gave out my sent a strangely casual message asking how long I had been in event work and whether business was good. An old neighbor liked one of the studio's public posts, then unliked it a few minutes later. None of it was dramatic on its own, but together it told a story I recognized immediately. They were trying to measure my life from the outside. They were trying to figure out whether I had become useful. The final piece came in a handwritten letter from my father. I knew it was from Gregory the second I saw the blocky writing on the envelope. Inside, there was no apology, no real concern. Just a few paragraphs about how I had made my point, how enough time had passed, and how it was my responsibility to stop holding grudges and remember where I came from. He wrote that family is family at the end of the day, and that a mature person knows when to move on. I read it twice, not because it deserved that much attention, but because I wanted to be absolutely sure I was seeing it clearly. And I was. Even after everything, he still believed he had the right to define maturity for me. The man who left me stranded in another city with no money and no plan was now lecturing me about growing up. I tore the letter in half over the kitchen trash and felt lighter the moment it left my hands. By then, Ellis STEM and Social was preparing to take on an expanded event space partnership, and Marjorie had started talking to me seriously about what my future in the business could look like long term. Evan and I were solid. My life was busy, full, and finally, stable. The difference between who I had been in that hotel lobby and who I was becoming now was so wide that sometimes it shocked even me. And that was when I understood something important. My family was not trying to reconnect because they had changed. They were circling back because they had finally realized I had become someone they could no longer dismiss. They had not come looking for a daughter. They were looking for a door back into a life they had once assumed would collapse without them. They just did not know yet that I had already learned how to lock it. By the time Marjorie started stepping back from the daily chaos of the business, I had already become the person clients asked for by name. What began as me sweeping floors and hauling boxes had turned into something I never could have imagined the night my family left me in St. Louis. I was designing event concepts, managing major accounts, handling budgets, negotiating vendor contracts, and making decisions that affected not just one shop, but the future of the company itself. Eventually, Marjorie offered me a larger ownership stake, and I said yes without pretending I was not terrified. It was the kind of fear that comes with finally having something worth protecting. We restructured the business, expanded our services, and built a reputation that stretched well beyond the neighborhoods where we had started. There were weekends when I was balancing wedding installs, corporate luncheons, and holiday events all in the same 48 hours, and somehow I loved it. I loved the pressure. I loved the precision. I loved that I had built a life where people trusted me to make important days beautiful. There was a time when my family used to act like I could not be trusted with my own future. Now entire rooms, full of expensive details and high expectations, moved because I knew how to hold them together. Around that same time, Evan asked me to marry him. He did it quietly, the way he did everything that mattered, with no audience and no performance. We were walking after dinner one evening, and he just stopped, looked at me with that steady expression of his, and said he wanted a life with me. Not a dramatic one, not a perfect one, just a real one. I said yes before he finished the question. Our wedding was small, intimate, and exactly what I wanted. No giant guest list, no obligation, no seat saved for people who had shared my blood but not my humanity. Marjorie stood beside me that day with tears in her eyes, and if anyone had told me years earlier that a woman I met while looking for a job would one day feel more like family than the people who raised me, I probably would not have believed them. But there I was, walking into a new life with Evan Parker while the old one stayed exactly where it belonged, outside the door. Not long after that, we had Ruby, and a few years later, in ways I hadn't. The obvious changes were the sleepless nights, the constant noise, the way your heart starts living outside your body the minute your child is born. But the deeper change was the sharp, permanent clarity about what love should never require. I looked at my children and understood, in a way that was almost painful, how unnatural my parents had been. You do not test people you love by humiliating them. You do not teach maturity by manufacturing fear. You do not leave your child stranded and call it character building. With Ruby and Theo, I never wanted obedience born from fear. I wanted trust. I wanted them to know home was the safest place they had, not the place where they had to watch every word and brace for whatever mood was coming through the door. And maybe that was part of my revenge too, though I did not think of it that way at first. I was giving my children the kind of peace I had needed so badly when I was their age. While my real life kept growing fuller, the life I came from was falling apart. I did not obsess over my family, but information has a way of traveling when people are careless enough online. Through a combination of public posts, mutual acquaintances, and the occasional late-night curiosity I did not feel proud of, I learned that Gregory's garage finally closed for good. He had spent years blaming chain repair shops, the economy, younger workers, customers, taxes, and anything else he could point at, but never himself. Linda started selling things online from home, first as a hobby, and then because it clearly stopped being a hobby at some point. Dylan bounced from one failed job to another, then through a marriage that ended badly enough for people back home to whisper about it. At one point, he was living with my parents again, which somehow felt inevitable. The golden child had finally discovered that life does not keep applauding you forever, just because your family does. I could have helped them at any point if I wanted to. By then I had money, stability, and resources they did not. But I never reached out. Not because I was cruel, and not because I spent my days fantasizing about them suffering. I didn't. The truth was simpler than that. Their hardship was not my responsibility any more than my survival had ever been theirs. They had made their choice the night they drove away from that hotel. Everything after that belonged to me. My job was to protect what I had built, not drag old damage into the middle of it just because guilt wears the same last name. Every now and then, something would break through the distance and remind me they had not forgotten I existed. A relative would mention my mother asking questions. A business page would get a quiet view from Iowa. An old family friend would suddenly pop up on social media after years of silence. Then one month, I started getting repeated notifications from LinkedIn. Someone was viewing my profile again and again, 27 times over a few weeks, all from the same name, Dylan Brooks. It was almost laughable in its lack of subtlety. He was not checking on me out of brotherly concern. He was studying me, looking at my title, my company, my professional history, the city where I worked, the shape of the life they had once been certain would collapse within a day. I did not block the profile right away. I let him look, let all of them look. If they were sharing screenshots back and forth the way I suspected they were, let them see the business, the promotions, the years of consistency, the public proof that I had done more than survive. I had become someone impossible to reduce to the role they wrote for me. And the more I thought about those repeated profile views, the more certain I became that something was coming. People like Gregory and Linda did not suddenly grow curious after 15 years because they had developed self-awareness. They got curious when they ran out of options. They had ignored me when they thought I was struggling. They had tried to control me when they thought I still needed them. So if they were watching now, it was for one reason only. They believed I had something they wanted. One evening, after I put Ruby and Theo to bed, I stood in the kitchen with a glass of water and told Evan I thought my family was going to show up sooner or later. He looked at me for a moment, nodded once, and asked the only question that mattered. What do you want to do if they do? That was one of the things I loved most about him. He never told me what forgiveness should look like. He never tried to make himself the moral center of my pain. He let me decide. I told him I did not know yet, but I knew this much. If they came, they would not be walking into the life of the girl they abandoned. They would be walking into mine. And this time, I would be the one deciding how the story ended. 3 days after I saw Dylan checking my profile for what had to be the 20th time, my doorbell camera lit up just before dinner. Gregory Brooks stood on my porch with Linda and Dylan behind him, all three of them looking older, smaller, and far less certain than the people who had once laughed about leaving me behind in St. Louis. For a second, I just watched them through the screen and felt nothing except clarity. Evan came to stand beside me, but he did not say a word. He did not have to. I opened the door and let them in. Not because they deserved kindness, but because I wanted them to see exactly what they had failed to destroy. They stood in my entryway, looking at the framed photos, the warm kitchen lights, the home I had built, and the children laughing in the next room. Gregory tried to speak first, but whatever speech he had prepared collapsed into the truth faster than he expected. The garage was gone. The house was gone. Medical bills were crushing them. Dylan was broke. They needed help. Linda started crying and said family should be there for each other. Gregory said they had made mistakes, but I was doing well now, and it was time to let the past go. I looked at him for a long moment and asked the only question that mattered. When exactly did I become family again? Nobody answered. Dylan looked at the floor. Linda cried harder. Gregory tried one last time to call what they did a lesson, and that was the moment I knew none of them had changed. They were not sorry for abandoning me. They were sorry I had survived without them. I went to my desk, took out an envelope, and placed it in Gregory's hand. Inside was $94.20, the exact amount I had calculated years ago for the bus fare, food, and emergency basics I needed the night they stranded me. I told him this was all they were ever owed from me, the cost of the lesson they had been so proud of. I said if they had truly wanted to teach me maturity, they would have made sure I was safe. Instead, they taught me something else. They taught me never to trust people who call cruelty love. Gregory's face hardened when he realized there would be no check, no rescue, no second chance to use me. Linda whispered my name like that might still work. It didn't. I opened the door and told them to leave. So they did, carrying their debt, their regret, and the tiny envelope that proved exactly how little they had left in my life. I locked the door behind them, went back to the kitchen, and sat down with my real family. That was the price they paid in the end. They lost the daughter they thought would always come back, and I gained the one thing they could never take from me again, a home built on love, respect, and peace. Sometimes the harshest revenge is not ruining the people who hurt you. It is letting them live long enough to see the life they were never allowed to touch again. At Revenge Argon, our team works hard to create meaningful and engaging stories that resonate with viewers. We want to make it clear that this story is completely fictional and is created to share educational lessons, valuable insights, and thoughtful storytelling with our audience. The villains in this story were especially painful because they disguised cruelty as a lesson and called betrayal love. Their actions remind us that sometimes the deepest wounds come from the people who should have protected us the most. If you were in Sienna's place, how would you deal with those family members